Allen Ginsberg there was a documentary about him last year, Hal. There's a film version of On the Road being shot.
Right.
There's been so much in the last few years, so much activity around these subjects. Why is it now that we're so interested in this world?
I think for very similar reasons that there was a pervasive darkness back then, and I think there is one now too. And I think that it's just this fascination with the time that things might have been different if the voices that these films are about had a greater impact, and the larger forces of money and finance and, you know, Reagan and all those people, if they hadn't won, I think it could have been very different.
Yeah. Ken Kesey obviously was probably best known for One Flew Over the Cuckoo's
Yes.
Nest. And certainly in Hollywood, it's a masterful movie in terms of even the story that Kirk Douglas
Right.
had it on Broadway and gifted it to his son, who then won an Oscar as a producer well before he established himself as an actor.
Yes.
In Michael Douglas, obviously. But if you could put yourself in Ken Kesey's head at that time, do you think any of it meant anything to him?
Well, he hated the movie, and he threatened to sue them, and he claims, and I suppose I believe him, but he claims that he never even saw the film. From his perspective, the film was written from the Indians' perspective, and Hollywood didn't do that. And so he was very upset. But, you know, little snippets of the screenplay that he was originally hired to write the screenplay for the based on the book, and he had done the bus trip by then, and he included parts of the bus trip in the screenplay for One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, and they were like, what is this? So it didn't work out that he didn't get his way, but I love the film. I think it's a beautiful film, very different, and I understand why they took the approach they did, but Ken hated it. So.
But he also wrote the play too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And he loved the play. He loved Kirk Douglas in the play, and he thought the play, there were lots of different versions of the play done, and he was, all about the Combine and various productions of the play. The set became this sort of living thing that became the Combine for him, and you couldn't get into that in the film in the same way.
It's somewhat ironic, or majorly ironic, that this guy who is so held up, alongside Timothy Leary as this poster child for wild craziness, LSD, and all that sort of stuff, really seems like a clean cut. It's one of the major points of the film. Is like he's a clean cut guy who had an athletic scholarship, is majorly talented academically, and was married to one person for a long time. For you guys, there's almost like a humor in that you guys bring to screen. Balancing the political context, the pharmaceutical context, and that component, the fun component. How much of a balancing juggling act is that, and how much editing down did you have to do to find that relationship?
For me, that relationship was always apparent. I mean, Ken's whole thing was don't compartmentalize. He hated that. He wanted things to be much more fluid. I mean, that's why he stopped writing, basically. He said the bus he called his best work, and it was living literature. It was jumped off the pages onto the streets. And he said, why is it a contradiction that we can be this and that? We're all these different things combined. It's the sum that makes us all,
Filmically, depicting his frog in the tape recorders and things like that was a lot of fun. And you could imagine that would come from the mind of someone on LSD.
Yeah.
I'm not going to be presumptuous, but I have to ask whether you and Alex did any experimentation of any sorts to bring those colours and things to fruition.
Maybe. No comment.